The great hall of the imperial palace stretched before General James Anderson like a river of polished stone. Towering crystalline pillars rose to impossible heights, their surfaces reflecting the soft purple glow of alien architecture. As Earth's chosen representative, Anderson maintained perfect posture despite the crushing gravity of the Empire's capital world. He wouldn't show weakness. Not here, not now. Two Imperial guards flanked him, their metallic scales gleaming under the artificial light. Their kind had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and their arrogance showed in every gesture, every glance they cast toward the primitive human in their midst. "The Council will see you now, Earth creature," the taller guard said, voice dripping with barely concealed disgust. Anderson ignored the insult. 6 months of diplomatic training had prepared him for this. Earth needed this peace treaty, needed the Empire to recognize humanity's right to expand beyond their solar system. The fate of his species might well depend on the next hour. The massive doors slid open with a whisper, revealing the Imperial Council chamber. 7 beings sat in elevated thrones, their bodies wrapped in ornate robes that sparkled with embedded technology far beyond current human capabilities. Or so they thought. "Approach, representative of Earth," the central figure commanded. High Counselor Vex, Anderson recalled from his briefings. The being's 6 eyes studied him with cold calculation. Anderson stepped forward, his polished boots clicking against the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber, emphasizing the silence that followed. He stopped at the designated spot, marked by an intricate pattern in the floor. "Honorable Council," Anderson began, his voice clear and strong. "I come bearing greetings and an offer of peaceful cooperation from Earth and all of humanity." A low murmur rippled through the council members. The High Counselor raised a hand, silencing them. "We have observed your kind, General Anderson," Vex said. "Your rapid technological advancement concerns us. In mere centuries, you've progressed from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary space travel." Anderson smiled diplomatically. If they only knew about the quantum drives and dark matter reactors hidden in Earth's underground facilities. Humanity had learned long ago to keep their true capabilities secret. "We are eager students of the universe," Anderson replied. "Earth would greatly benefit from Imperial guidance and friendship." One of the council members leaned forward, their jeweled headpiece catching the light. "And what does Earth offer in return? Your planets are resource poor, your technology primitive. Why should the Empire waste time on such limited beings? Humanity offers innovation, Counselor. We may be young, but we bring fresh perspectives, new ways of thinking. The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. Surely you see the value in fresh ideas." The High Counselor's expression shifted slightly. Anderson caught it, a flash of something dangerous in those alien eyes. His military instincts, honed over 30 years of service, screamed a warning. "Yes," Vex said slowly. "Human innovation, human unpredictability, human aggression." The last word carried weight, like a death sentence. "We have reviewed your history, General. Endless wars, constant conflict. Even now, you maintain military forces far larger than needed for a peaceful species." Anderson felt the trap closing, but maintained his diplomatic smile. "We learn from our mistakes, Counselor. Earth is united now, and we seek only peaceful." "Enough." The High Counselor stood. "We have deliberated long before your arrival, General Anderson. Humanity represents a clear threat to galactic stability. Your kind advances too quickly, thinks too unpredictably. You cannot be controlled." The guards moved closer. Anderson's hand twitched toward a weapon he wasn't carrying. "This audience is over," Vex declared. "You will be detained pending your trial for crimes against galactic peace. The Empire will deal with Earth, appropriately." As the guards grabbed his arms, Anderson allowed himself a grim smile. If the Empire thought humanity was dangerous now, they had no idea what they were about to unleash. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly, but the council had already turned away. They would learn soon enough. 3 days had passed since General Anderson's arrest. They kept him in a cell made of transparent material stronger than steel, high above the imperial capital's endless cityscape. The purple glow of alien buildings stretched to the horizon, a beautiful view for what he now knew would be his last days. The trial, if you could call it that, had been quick. The Empire hadn't bothered with real evidence. They didn't need to. The verdict had been decided long before Anderson set foot in their palace. "Stand up, human," a guard ordered, deactivating the cell's force field. "The High Council awaits." Anderson stood tall, straightening his now wrinkled uniform. They hadn't allowed him to change clothes, wanting him to look defeated. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. The execution chamber was packed with aliens from across the galaxy. The Empire had turned his death into a spectacle, a warning to others who might challenge their power. Floating camera drones buzzed through the air, broadcasting the event to thousands of worlds. High Counselor Vex stood on an elevated platform, his ceremonial robes even more elaborate than before. "James Anderson, representative of Earth, you have been found guilty of espionage, conspiracy against the Empire, and plotting acts of terrorism." Anderson laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. "We both know those charges are lies." Silence. Vex's 6 eyes flashed with anger. "Your species' arrogance ends today. Let all who watch learn the price of defying imperial order." 2 guards pushed Anderson toward a circular platform in the center of the room. Above it hung a complex device that hummed with energy, the plasma chamber, a particularly cruel method of execution, designed to make death both painful and spectacular. But the Empire had made one crucial mistake. They'd allowed him to keep his ceremonial rank insignia, thinking it merely decorative. Hidden inside was humanity's most advanced quantum transmitter, powerful enough to send one last message through subspace. As the guards secured him to the platform, Anderson caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. The alien merchant who'd visited Earth 5 years ago, claiming to be a simple trader. The one who'd inadvertently revealed the Empire's weakness to quantum-based attacks. The Empire's overconfidence would be their downfall. Anderson activated the transmitter with a subtle movement. "Earth Command, this is General Anderson. Implementation of Protocol Omega. Authorization Code, Thermopila." The guard stepped back. The plasma chamber began to glow. "Any last words, human?" Vex asked, savoring his moment of triumph. Anderson looked directly into the nearest camera drone. "Remember what they did here. Remember why. And don't let them get away with it." The plasma field activated. Searing pain enveloped Anderson's body, but he refused to scream. Instead, he smiled, knowing what his death would unleash. On Earth, in the deep bunkers beneath the Rocky Mountains, the quantum transmission arrived. Military commanders, political leaders, and scientific directors watched in horror as their general burned. The plasma execution lasted 3 full minutes, broadcast across the galaxy as a lesson in imperial power. They didn't expect the response. Within hours, Earth's nations had convened an emergency session. Ancient rivalries disappeared in the face of alien brutality. As the recording played on screens worldwide, humanity's fractious nature transformed into something the Empire had never anticipated. Perfect, unanimous unity. In orbit, hidden shipyards began powering up. Underground factories activated production lines for weapons the Empire didn't know existed. Sleeping warrior battalions woke in their cryo chambers. The president of the United Earth Council stood before the emergency session, her voice steady despite the anger in her eyes. "They thought this would break us. Instead, it will unite us. The Empire believes they've seen humanity at our weakest. Now they'll see us at our strongest." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every settlement agreed on one course of action. Total war. Deep beneath Mount Cheyenne, the war room buzzed with activity. Screens covered every wall, showing military bases awakening across Earth and her colonies. 1 month had passed since Anderson's execution, and humanity had not wasted a single minute. Admiral Thomas stood at the central command table, watching holographic fleet formations take shape. 20 years ago, when the Empire's scout ships first appeared in the solar system, Earth had begun preparing in secret. Now, those preparations would pay off. "Status report," she ordered, her gray hair reflecting the blue glow of tactical displays. "All hidden shipyards at full production." "Admiral," her executive officer reported. "The Jupiter yards alone have completed 30 destroyers this week. Mars facilities are rolling out fighters faster than we can train pilots." Thomas nodded, studying the production numbers. The Empire thought Earth had only a handful of primitive space vessels. They had no idea about the vast construction facilities hidden in asteroid belts and beneath the surfaces of dead moons. "What about Project Thunderbolt?" A scientist stepped forward, his lab coat contrasting with the military uniforms around him. "The quantum disruptors are ready, Admiral. We've adapted the technology we learned from that overconfident Imperial merchant. Their shields won't know what hit them." On another screen, columns of tanks rolled out of underground factories. Not the primitive vehicles the Empire's spies had seen, but advanced machines powered by dark matter reactors. Beside them marched soldiers in powered armor suits, technology reverse-engineered from a crashed Imperial scout ship. "Message from Luna Command," an officer called out. "The Ghost Fleet is ready for deployment." Thomas allowed herself a small smile. The Ghost Fleet, humanity's masterpiece of deception. Ships built with stolen Imperial stealth technology, invisible to their sensors. The perfect first strike force. "What about our allies?" Thomas asked, turning to the diplomatic section. "The resistance movements on 17 Imperial worlds have confirmed their support," a diplomat responded. "They've waited centuries for a chance to break the Empire's hold. Anderson's execution was the spark they needed." In orbital stations around Earth, Special Forces teams trained in zero-gravity combat. Their weapons were designed specifically to counter Imperial tactics, developed through years of careful study. Every Imperial victory broadcast, every show of force, had been analyzed for weaknesses. "Admiral," her executive officer said quietly, "do you think they suspect anything?" Thomas shook her head. "Their arrogance blinds them. They see what they expect to see. A primitive species cowering after their display of power. Their spies report what's on the surface. Grief, fear, apparent disarray." She gestured to a screen showing public news broadcasts, carefully crafted scenes of human weakness, designed to feed Imperial overconfidence. "Latest intelligence from the Imperial capital," an analyst reported. "They're celebrating Anderson's execution as a great victory. Palace security has actually been reduced. They believe the threat is over." Thomas's expression hardened. Then they're in for one hell of a surprise. She pressed a button, activating the global command channel. Her voice would reach every military base, every hidden facility, every training ground on and off Earth. "All commands, begin final preparation phase. The Empire took one of our own and made him an example. In doing so, they forgot the most important lesson of human history. We learn from our defeats. We adapt. We overcome." Around the world, soldiers, pilots, and crews snapped to attention. "In 1 week, we launch Operation Righteous Thunder. Every hidden weapon, every secret ship, every advanced technology we've developed will be revealed at once. The Empire thinks they've taught us our place in the galaxy." She paused, looking at Anderson's image on the wall. "Instead, they're about to learn theirs. May God have mercy on them, because humanity won't." Command out. In the silence that followed, the sounds of preparation echoed through every facility on Earth. The Empire had wanted to make an example of humanity. They were about to succeed, just not in the way they'd planned. The Imperial border station hung in space, its purple force fields shimmering against the starlit backdrop. The station's commander stood at his post, bored with another routine shift guarding against threats that never came. His sensors showed nothing unusual, just empty space and a few authorized merchant vessels. He never saw the Ghost Fleet coming. 100 human warships dropped their stealth fields simultaneously. They appeared like avenging angels, their black hulls absorbing light, their weapons already locked on target. The station's alarms blared too late. Quantum disruptors fired, their beams passing through the Imperial shields as if they weren't there. The mighty border station, pride of Imperial engineering, cracked like an egg. Similar scenes played out across 50 Imperial systems simultaneously. Humanity's first strike had begun. Admiral Thomas watched from her flagship, the HFY Anderson. "Status report," she commanded. "All primary targets neutralized," her tactical officer reported. "Imperial response ships are launching, but their communications are in chaos. They can't coordinate their defense." On the main screen, Imperial warships tried to form defensive positions. Their tactics were textbook perfect, and completely useless against an enemy that had spent years studying how to counter them. "Launch fighter squadrons," Thomas ordered. "Show them what humanity can really do." Hundreds of fighters erupted from the larger ships. Not the clumsy vessels Earth had shown the Empire, but sleek machines powered by dark matter cores. They moved in ways Imperial pilots had never seen, breaking formation patterns that hadn't changed in 1,000 years. "Imperial flagship detected," the sensor officer called out. "They're trying to organize a counterattack." Thomas smiled grimly. "Perfect. All ships, implement attack pattern Delta." The human fleet split apart, executing maneuvers that looked like chaos, but were actually precisely planned. Imperial commanders, trained to fight in rigid formations, couldn't adapt fast enough. "Ma'am, we're receiving transmissions from the surface," her communications officer reported. "The resistance movements are rising up. Imperial ground forces are being overwhelmed." A massive Imperial dreadnought appeared from hyperspace, its weapons charging. It was 3 times the size of Thomas's flagship, exactly as their intelligence had predicted. "Now they'll see why we named this Operation Righteous Thunder," Thomas said. "Deploy the Thunderbolt platforms." Small, innocent-looking satellites detached from the human ships. The Imperial dreadnought ignored them, focusing its weapons on the larger threats. Suddenly, artificial lightning erupted from the platforms, connecting in a deadly web. The massive ship's systems overloaded, its shields collapsing. "They're sending out distress calls," the communications officer reported. "The Empire, they don't understand what's happening. They're asking how we got this technology." "Send them our response," Thomas ordered. "The same message to all frequencies. On every Imperial channel, on every command frequency," General Anderson's last words played. "Remember what they did here. Remember why. And don't let them get away with it." The battle raged for hours, but its outcome was never in doubt. When the dust settled, humanity controlled 12 Imperial sectors. The mighty Empire had lost more territory in one day than in the previous 1,000 years. In her command chair, Thomas watched the after-action reports flood in. Casualties were minimal, exactly as planned. The Empire's rigid tactics, unchanged for centuries, had been no match for human innovation. "Message from Earth Command," her officer reported. "They're saying—" He paused, grinning. "They're saying this is just the beginning." Thomas looked at the tactical display, showing human forces advancing steadily towards the Empire's core worlds. They had planned this campaign for 20 years, waiting for the right moment. The Empire's arrogance in executing Anderson had given them that moment. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. The Empire had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, they were about to learn one themselves. Never underestimate those you think beneath you. Especially humans. The Imperial Palace's war room had lost its grandeur. High Counselor Vex stood among his advisors, watching their mighty empire crumble on the tactical displays before them. 2 weeks had passed since humanity's first strike, and nothing had gone according to plan. "How?" Vex demanded, his 6 eyes blazing with fury. "How are these primitives defeating our best fleets?" A military commander stepped forward, his metallic scales dulled with fatigue. They don't fight like anyone we've faced before, High Counselor. They adapt, change tactics mid-battle. Our formations are useless, another commander interrupted. They've studied us, known our moves before we make them. On the main screen, another Imperial battle group reported heavy losses. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished again. Traditional Imperial pursuit tactics only led to ambushes. Surely our technology, Vex began, is being turned against us, the Empire's chief scientist said. That merchant they captured 5 years ago, he didn't just give them information. He gave them understanding. They've taken our basic principles and improved them. A communication officer burst into the room. High Counselor, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet. And the humans, they're broadcasting something on all our frequencies. The screens flickered. General Anderson's execution played again, but this time followed by scenes of Imperial ships burning, bases falling, and subject races rising up in rebellion. Send the reserve fleets, Vex ordered. All of them. Sir, a commander protested. Our defense doctrine requires. The doctrine is failing. Vex swept his arm across a desk, scattering datapads. Look around you. Everything we've relied on for 10,000 years is failing. In another sector, an Imperial admiral attempted to counter human tactics. He split his forces, tried to fight unpredictably. But his crews, trained in rigid patterns for generations, couldn't adapt fast enough. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, striking like lightning and disappearing into the void. Latest intelligence, High Counselor, an analyst reported. The humans, they're not just fighting us. They're freeing our subject worlds, teaching them our weaknesses. The Centaurians have already declared independence. Vex slumped in his command chair. The Empire had ruled through fear and the assumption of superiority. Now both were being shattered. Send a message, he finally said. Open diplomatic channels. Perhaps we can. They're refusing all communication, the officer replied. Except, they keep broadcasting one message. Unconditional surrender. In the depths of space, another Imperial fleet commander watched his ships die. Human vessels phased through their strongest shields, weapons struck from impossible angles, and every attempt to retreat led to waiting ambushers. They're not even using their full strength, a tactical officer realized aloud. These attacks, they're precise, calculated. They're hurting us. He was right. Human forces weren't just winning battles, they were systematically driving Imperial forces back toward their core worlds. Each retreat left more sectors in human hands, more peoples freed from Imperial control. Back in the palace, Vex received the final insult, a transmission targeted specifically to his private channel. Admiral Thomas's face appeared on his screen. You thought executing one human would break us, she said calmly. Instead, you united us. Every advancement we've made, every tactic we've developed, every weapon we've built, they're all aimed at you now. She leaned closer to the camera. You could have had us as allies. Instead, you chose to have us as enemies. Remember that when your empire falls. The transmission ended, leaving Vex staring at his reflection in the dark screen. Behind him, reports of fresh disasters continued to pour in. The Empire had spent 10,000 years winning victories. Now, in just 2 weeks, humans had taught them how it felt to lose. And they weren't finished teaching yet. The Imperial capital system's outer defense ring was supposed to be impenetrable. 300 battle stations, 10,000 ships, and layered defense shields built up over millennia. It had never fallen in 10,000 years. It fell in 6 hours. Admiral Thomas watched from the bridge of the HSS Anderson as human forces swept through the defenses like a scythe through wheat. They had saved their best weapons for this final push. Deploy the nanite swarms, she ordered. Clouds of microscopic machines poured from specialized human ships. The Empire had never seen this technology before. They still built everything big, visible, intimidating. These invisible warriors slipped through shield gaps and began disassembling Imperial ships from the inside out. Enemy fleet breaking formation, her tactical officer reported with satisfaction. They're trying to adapt to the nanites, but they can't adapt fast enough. Thomas finished. Launch the AI battle units. Sleek, unmanned fighters emerged from human carriers. Unlike traditional drones, these machines thought for themselves, adapted in microseconds, and learned from every engagement. Imperial pilots, trained to fight predictable enemies, found themselves overwhelmed by opponents that evolved their tactics mid-battle. On the command channel, Imperial officers shouted in panic. They're everywhere. Shields failing. How are they inside our systems? Fall back toe. The voices cut off as another defense layer crumbled. Thomas allowed herself a small smile. 20 years of preparation were paying off exactly as planned. Message from the planet's surface. Her communications officer called out. The Resistance is making their move. Imperial ground forces are facing widespread rebellion. On the tactical display, the situation was clear. Human forces had split the Imperial defenses into isolated pockets, cutting off their ability to support each other. It was a strategy taken from humanity's own military history. Divide and conquer. Their flagship is attempting to break through, Tactical reported. Shall we pursue? No need, Thomas replied. Show them what else we've been hiding. A new ship emerged from cloak directly in the Imperial flagship's path. It was smaller than other human vessels, but its hull glowed with strange energy. 20 years of quantum research had produced something the Empire had thought impossible. Dimensional inverter activated, the science officer announced. Space itself seemed to twist. The Imperial flagship, pride of their fleet, simply disappeared. Not destroyed. Sent somewhere else. The Empire had mastered faster than light travel, but humanity had gone further. They'd learned to manipulate space itself. High Counselor Vex is requesting communication, the comm officer reported, surprise in his voice. Thomas straightened in her command chair. Put him through. Vex's image appeared on screen. Gone was the arrogant ruler who had ordered Anderson's execution. This was a broken being, watching his empire crumble. Please, he began. We can negotiate. Like you negotiated with Anderson. Thomas's voice was ice cold. The time for diplomacy ended when you burned our general. Now you have one choice, unconditional surrender. You don't understand, Vex pleaded. Our empire has ruled for 10,000 years. We bring order, stability. You bring stagnation. Thomas cut him off. And now you bring nothing. Your choice, Counselor. Surrender or watch your capital burn. As if to emphasize her point, another defense station vanished into dimensional space. The remaining Imperial ships began powering down weapons. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, they're surrendering. All of them. Thomas nodded slowly. On her personal screen, she pulled up an image of General Anderson. Everything. The hidden preparations, the advanced weapons, the careful strategy, had stemmed from his sacrifice. Send word to all commands, she ordered. Begin final approach to the capital. And keep broadcasting Anderson's last message on all frequencies. The Empire had thought humans were primitive, predictable, controllable. Their last mistake would be their greatest. 1 month after the fall of the Imperial capital, the Great Hall of the Imperial Palace hosted a very different gathering. Where once Imperial counselors had sneered at lesser beings, now representatives from 100 worlds sat together as equals. Admiral Thomas stood at the same spot where Anderson had made his final plea for peace. The difference was striking. Instead of facing arrogant Imperial lords, she addressed a chamber of free peoples. The war is over, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. The last Imperial holdout surrendered this morning. Applause erupted from the gathered representatives. Species that had suffered under Imperial rule for centuries celebrated their newfound freedom. The empire that had lasted 10,000 years had fallen in just 3 months. In the center of the chamber, a hologram activated. A massive memorial took shape, a perfect recreation of General Anderson, standing proud in his uniform. The inscription below read, "Remember what they did. Remember why. Remember to never let it happen again." "The trial of the Imperial Council begins tomorrow," Thomas continued. "They will answer for their crimes, not just against humanity, but against all peoples they oppressed. But today we look to the future." She gestured to the huge windows, where ships from dozens of species now moved freely through space. Human vessels patrolled alongside their new allies, ensuring the peace. "Humanity never wanted to rule," Thomas said. "We wanted to explore, to trade, to learn. The Empire forced us to become warriors. Now that the war is won, we return to our true nature, but we will never forget to remain vigilant." In orbit above the capital, the HSS Anderson held position. The flagship's quantum cannons were powered down, but ready. Humanity had learned its lesson well. Peace through strength, but strength tempered with wisdom. The former Imperial archives had revealed the truth. The Empire had feared humanity's potential. They had seen how quickly humans advanced, how easily they adapted, how fiercely they fought when threatened. The execution of Anderson had been meant to crush that potential. Instead, it had unleashed it. "From today forward," Thomas announced, "the Galactic Council replaces the Empire. Every species will have a voice. Every world will have a vote. And together, we will build something better than the Empire ever dreamed of." In the audience, former resistance leaders sat beside human officers. They had fought together, built together, won together. Now they would build together. On Earth, crowds gathered to watch the broadcast. Children who had watched Anderson's execution in horror now cheered humanity's victory. Schools would teach this history, not to glorify war, but to remember its cost and the importance of standing against tyranny. "We have established the Anderson Protocol," Thomas continued. "Any species reaching for the stars will be welcomed, guided, helped, not crushed or enslaved. The galaxy will never again know the grip of imperial fear." The memorial hologram shifted, showing scenes from the war. Not scenes of destruction, but of liberation. Human forces fighting alongside resistance fighters. Freed peoples celebrating their independence. Former enemies learning to work together. General Anderson's sacrifice showed us the true face of the Empire, Thomas concluded. But it also showed us the true face of humanity. When pushed too far, we don't break. We unite. When faced with overwhelming odds, we don't submit. We innovate. When told to accept tyranny, we don't bow. We fight. She touched the memorial's base gently. The Empire thought they would make an example of humanity. They succeeded, just not in the way they intended. Let the galaxy remember. Never mistake patience for weakness, preparation for submission, or mercy for fear. The applause was thunderous. As Thomas stepped back, she smiled slightly. The Empire had wanted to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. They had succeeded. That place was making sure no power would ever again do to others what the Empire had done to them. Humanity had learned its lesson well, and now so had the galaxy.